Hello everyone, I am Emily and I like turning used dolls into cool characters. This time I'd like to turn this Monster High doll into the hardest game boss known to humanity, Malenia Blade of Miquella from Elden Ring. She is also the hardest project I've done so far, so I would be very grateful if you support me with your likes and comments. Thank you!
Heed my words. I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella. And I have never known defeat.
Malenia is a tall lady, but not as tall as Lady Dimitrescu. I think she is about 2 meters tall, which is 60 centimeters or 2 feet shorter than Lady D, but way taller than an average woman. So I've chosen a doll of Headmistress Bloodgood as a base for Malenia to make her look more or less proportional to the other dolls on my shelf.
Troll bogies.
Monster High dolls have pretty large heads, and when I started making Malenia's helmet, I realized that with the helmet her head looks way too massive, so I've decided to try to shrink her head in acetone. For the best effect you need to let the head soak in acetone for 48 hours, and then let it dry for 48 hours until the head becomes small and hard like plastic. After shrinking, her facial features got way sharper and the head got a bit deformed. So before I start sculpting the rod, I'd like to remove some material from her jawline, cheekbones and forehead. I also made her chin a bit sharper and sanded her nose and lips. And now I can finally sculpt the rod using epoxy sculpt. At first I make a smooth layer of epoxy sculpt over all of the rotten area. And then use a piece of sponge to get the main texture. Just this texture by itself looks great already, but now let's add more lumps and wounds to make her look more like Malenia. In the video of making Rani, I mentioned that all of the demigods in Elden Ring were born with some sort of a curse, right? And Malenia is like a prime example of it, as she was born rotting alive, while her twin brother Miquella was cursed with the body of a child. I have the back of her head covered with masking tape because I started gluing her hair right after sculpting the face by mistake. Usually I do the hair before the face up only if I reroute heads, which was my first plan for Malenia as well. But after shrinking the head it became impossible as the head is too hard for a needle. So anyway, I just covered those few hair I glued and started the face up. For painting the rod I used acrylic paint, and it was my favorite part of this project because I like working with color, and the fact that I was painting a rotten face wasn't bothering me at all. This is the case when the face-up could be done just with acrylics, which is nice if you don't have a sealant, but I've decided to blush her skin with pastels as well, just for some more realistic shades. I also thought that it might look cool if I make her lips match her hair, but my friend said that it takes too much attention away from the rod, and I was like, fair play, and repainted her lips off camera into more natural brown color. After the face up is done, I can continue gluing hair. For Malenia I chose this nice red nylon hair. I wonder if her hair is red because she represents Scarlet Rot. Either way, her hair looks very beautiful. And I've decided to glue her hair on glue for jewelry, as it's waterproof and has stronger grip compared to PVA. PVA is nice to use for acrylic hair, but nylon is heavier, harder and more slippery, so I've decided that PVA might be a bit too weak for it. Another positive thing about shrinking the head is that I used only about half of the usual amount of hair this doll needs to cover the whole head. Stonks! As a final touch, I give her hair some nice curls using a glass straw and a hair straightener. I set it on the lowest temperature to not melt the hair, and I also advise to test the temperature on some spare hair first, especially if the hair is thin, like the ones I used for Rani, for example. That was it with the head. Let's move to the body modification. Malenia has lost her right arm and both legs to the Scarlet Rot and has had them replaced with prosthetics, and I'm going to make one of the arms removable on a magnet as well. But first I need to free some space between her arm and body for the sculpted parts of the arm. In-game, her metal arm also looks a bit longer than the other one, so I'm going to increase its length on top with a magnet and under the elbow with a wire and epoxy sculpt. As I mentioned before, Malenia and her twin brother Miquella were born with kinda opposite curses, but as kids they were very close, and Miquella decided to spend his life searching for the cure for his sister, who wasn't supposed to ever grow into adulthood. He couldn't find any way to undo the curses they were born with, but he designed a needle of unalloyed gold that could stop the Scarlet Rot from spreading. Malenia on her side swore to fight for her brother and became Malenia, Blade of Miquella. Malenia and Miquella are children of Queen Marika and the Elden Lord Radagon, which means they had right to replace their mother as a god of a new age. I don't know how exactly this happened, but apparently Queen Marika and her husband were the same person, which made all of the demigods cursed in the first place. Yeah, this plot twist might surprise some people, but not me, because, you know, I'm something of a scientist myself, and I watched South Park. Remember the episode where Eric Cartman tried to find out who is his father, and it came out that his mother is also his father? Yes, exactly. So maybe Eric Cartman is a real Elden Lord.
And you will respect my authority!
Yeah, right.
What do you think? The crossover we neither wanted nor needed. Her metal arm took me a lot of thinking. The first thing I noticed is in game she removes her arm entirely, including the shoulder blade. Could I make it that way? Yes. If I would have removed her arm completely and placed a magnet instead of the joint, but in this case I would lose 1 point of articulation, so I keep the joint and place the magnet lower. I thought I would do it that way and attach the shoulder blade to the arm and get almost the same result as in the game. However, when I tried out the shoulder blade, I felt like if I attach it to the arm, it will be in the way when I want to detach the arm from the doll. I didn't want to risk that and fixed the shoulder blade to the leftover arm instead. It's not exactly what I wanted, but still looks okay. Finally done with the most time-consuming part, and now can start painting. In the process of doll customizing, sculpting is my least favorite part, but painting I love the most. Probably because the result of the painting is more apparent. The painting process is much easier when the sculpting is done well, so it's worth investing time into the sculpting process. Speaking of time, in May I started to keep a journal where I note my working hours, and I came up with a game we could play together. Guess how many hours I've spent on this doll? Try to guess, I'm so excited to see your predictions. Leave a comment down below. I think I'll also make a poll in the community tab, but right now I'll give you a clue. Toph is my easiest doll so far, and Malenia is the hardest. And in the same time period I put into Malenia, I could have made Toph 3 times. Insane, right? For the dolls with interesting bodies, I like to make nude photo sets as well, just to appreciate the work, right? Now let's dress our noble lady. A new body type means I need a new basic pattern. For the outfit, I'm going to use some textured fabric. At first I couldn't find anything fitting in shops and tried to make my own fabric with folds, which is not the worst option, but I kept searching and found this textured fabric. The only problem is that there were no fitting color options, however, I solved it with fabric dye. Pattern making took me a lot of thinking, this time because I'm going to use a special textured fabric and I need to keep in mind how the folds will go and also make the minimum amount of seams as the fabric is thick. The cool thing about this fabric is that I can make nice hidden gatherings instead of darts when fitting the dress. On the bottom of the dress, Malenia has something like a fringe, but it looks like loops. I couldn't find any fitting trim with loops for her, but I came up with some weird stitch that looks a bit bulky and yet fitting. When I was little, I had a huge interest in different types of embroidery, and now it comes in handy. People used to tell me that I have way too many interests and I should choose one thing and concentrate on it. But in my case, wisdom of years has proven that it's better to have multiple skills on decent levels than only one skill but be excellent in it. Is it even possible to reach perfection? I doubt so. Besides that, it must be so boring to spend your whole life doing only one thing. Definitely not something for me. For the cape, I repurposed the pattern I made for Storm and adjusted it a bit. The cape will be gathered in front, so I moved darts from the shoulder seams to the sides. Malenia's cape is also not that simple because it has a picture of the Earth Tree on it. As a reference, I used a picture from Elden Ring Collector's Edition. First, I roughly sketched the tree with my air erasable pen for textile and then drew the details with golden acrylic paint, also special for textile. After applying, I let this paint dry for 24 hours and then iron it through a sheet of cotton fabric without steam. It will seal the paint on fabric and make it possible to wash without damaging the drawing. It's my second time drawing such a complex pattern on the doll's clothes. A year ago I used the same technique on my 2B doll and she still looks fabulous. The tastiest piece I kept for the last, and it's her helmet. I'm going to make a base for it out of thermoplastic, but at first I need to make a pattern using pretty much the same technique as I use for clothes. After shrinking the head, the helmet needed to be adjusted as well, and I just split it into halves and removed some material from the middle. Glued it back together, and now it fits just right, which means I can add all of the little details using epoxy sculpt. Okay, let's check the end result. Let me know which part of the video you liked the most, and don't forget to leave your predictions how long the doll took to make. Thanks for watching! Bye!